It's also my privilege to introduce Madelyn, Dr. Madelyn Law, who's going to give the keynote address. Dr. Madelyn Law is an associate professor in the Department of Health Sciences at Brock University. She's the co-director of iEquip, which is the Interprofessional Education for Quality Improvement Program. And she's also the Brock University Service Learning Faculty Associate. She's busy. Madelyn focuses her energies on providing service learning experiences for students so they're able to understand academic connection to real-world situations and while providing a value added to organizations. Madelyn's research focuses on creating high-quality systems across health sectors. She is passionate about continuous improvement, change management, and understanding the influence of organizational culture on performance outcome. So it's my pleasure to turn it over to Dr. Madelyn Law.
Thank you very much, Gail. So you'll see my first transferable skill, which is the ability to try to stay on track while I jump back and forth and click through my slides, because that lovely clicker isn't working. But if you've ever been in academia or presented, you just never know what you're going to get with your technology. So transferable skill, be flexible and don't freak out when something isn't going your way. So in saying that, I will click. Sure not. No, that'd be too easy. Or I might just not use my slides, and there's a whole nother, oh, there. Okay, so looking at the conference, and when I looked through those objectives and the key learnings that were the core of the SHIFT conference, I really like that idea of the kind of visualization of orbiting that will really help to shape, shape this SHIFT conference. And I liked the ideas of self-discovery, the transferable skills, and career action, and I hope that you can use that as a framework or a frame of reference for really reflecting on your own personal skills. So I don't know if you can see that, but that's the kind of, in the middle is academia. So I was thinking orbiting here. And the other part's me, that little thing going around and around the academia. For quite some time when I was a master's student, I honestly felt like the sun rose and set in relation to my research topic. And if you can nod your head, I know that feeling. I was so driven to do a great job on my thesis. I was excited about my topic. Then things started to shift. And I got thinking, what else could I do? And, that's kind of how I felt, is that instead of just looking at this little part of where I was, I started kind of looking at all these things. What else could I do? There were so many possibilities and so many ideas. Is doing research enough for me forever, right, for my career? Then I panicked. I'll be honest, I really did panic. At the moment, I realized that maybe this was not what I was meant to do for the rest of my life, and I really had no one to turn to at that time to talk to and to think about this. And I do wish I'd had an opportunity like this to link with such amazing people in a very relaxed and fun environment, which I think this is going to be here today. People who might have been able to give me some of those insights, what could be my possible next steps in my career. Being able to harness this day and learn from others who have had a similar path as you, or some people that might have a very different one, it really provides you with an opportunity to say, wow, I never really thought of that, and wow, maybe I could do that. Now you're probably looking at me and saying, well, who's this academic up here telling me, there's other things out there, and professional development and go into another career? Well, I do think that I can say this. And the reason is, if you haven't seen this, you can see how those paths are all kind of all over the place. I think I can do this because my path to academia was not a straight line, which is quite common to some academics. I had quite the bends and the curves in the road that have brought me to academia. I think that I'm on a bit of a straightaway. I'll be honest, I think it is a straightaway at this point. Maybe because I got tenure and I'm excited and happy that I got that. Oh, I'm going to stay in academia. So I think I'm there for a little while, but I just don't know what that next turn might look like. What I could learn, how I could grow professionally, and maybe see my current skills being more useful or being transferable into another career path. I like Formula One. So I'm really always looking out for that curve. What could happen next? How can I be flexible to really think about what opportunities might be in front of me? And I'll be honest, I really have not come to this explicitly or intentionally, but through mentorship and guidance of key people in my life, I've been able to become more cognizant of this. And when I speak of mentorship, I don't see it as I want to be just like my mentor and follow in their footsteps. Okay, I'm glad you laughed because I didn't know how old I was. You actually remember these guys. Mini-me, right? So with that, I think you need to find a mentor who is willing to get to know you, to understand your strengths, and help you to connect and guide you in a way that's not self-serving to the mentor, but that is supportive of you. You need to find a mentor that sees you as a return on investment. And I see my students' successes as a return on that investment. I would never take credit for any of their successes, but I hope as a mentor that I have had one or two conversations that have helped to set them in a different direction or a stronger trajectory. The only thing self-serving for me, and I will be honest, is that I like to live vicariously through all the very cool careers that they end up getting. I'm like, oh, I should have applied for that. It's a cool career, right? But I get to help set them on a trajectory of understanding their skills and thinking a little bit differently. So having a good mentor, though, comes with the need to be open to opportunity and to understand your comfort level with change. So how open you are to something that may be just a little different, or how willing you are to take a leap at something different, as these things might make a difference. Being in a state of readiness for opportunities is important. However, you may be very happy on your straightaway at the moment, and with the goal of a PhD and an academic position, and that's great. That's okay. And here today, you can learn about how to prepare for this next step in your career. Or you might be at that bend in the road, and you may need to figure out what to do about that. So sessions today, I hope you're able to think about that and really reflect on where you are at on your path. As a master's student, my critical reflection came in the form of reviewing the past and wondering if I could maybe do that job. I really had no idea what I was qualified for after getting a master's in physical education with a specialization in the development of expertise in sport. Yes, I know. What is that? And what are you going to do with that? And I'm sure you've never been asked that question about your thesis, right? Never. Being in a graduate program is a unique opportunity to be exposed to many things, but also to become an expert in your area. Everyone thinks you're so smart and you're so educated, and yes, you are. You definitely are. But the issue arises is what do we do next with our vast skills that have been obtained through these degrees? How do we make sense of these skills? How do we really understand how the skills we've gained through academia would look like in a career outside of academia? So after looking at all these job ads and thinking that I also had an undergraduate degree from Brock in sport management, and in my search for identifying where I might be useful in the world, I sent letters of introduction in my resume to all general managers of every professional sports team in Canada, just because I thought I had really nothing to lose. I got a few calls, but I'll be honest, I think they were more out of pity than anything else. But I had some people who were willing to take 5 minutes out of their day, call me, and give me a few tidbits of advice on how to repackage myself. And then I ended up working in marketing and communications in a provincial sport organization. I had to know how to write, I had to know how to talk to athletes, I had to know how to synthesize information and reproduce information for a broad audience. All these skills are things that I learned in my master's program. However, I think about the interview, and I did not in any way, shape, or form articulate these skills appropriately. And I often wish I had, because I probably would have been able to negotiate a better salary. I believe we have significantly progressed in our thinking in relation to graduate programs and what they can do for our students. It is no longer this kind of self-perpetuating approach that master's students go on to PhDs, then go on to postdocs, and then go on to a job in academia. But again, I'm not slagging that, obviously, right? It's a great gig and I love it, but it's not for everyone, and nor should it be. So I'll show you a picture here. So this was just in the news this week. These individuals were finished a PhD program, but they're now engaged in a business venture that requires having research skills, and they have to be able to harness their learnings as academics into a business. So I know you can't really see that very well, but they're looking at concussions, and they were going to go on and do more research in a faculty position, but then instead they started a business. And with that, the comment was this. I don't know if everybody can see it back there, so I'll read it. So being a doctoral student and being an entrepreneur aren't that different. You have to be very self-directed. You work ridiculously long hours for uncertain outcomes. I'm sure we can all feel that. You're hoping for the big hit on your ideas, no more revisions, right? And it's your own cleverness that helps you sink or swim. And really, that speaks to that entrepreneur, but also to the academic. So these individuals were able to bridge that and really show how their academic training links into this business venture. So, however, in order to diverge from the traditional path, you have to take the time to reflect, understand, harness those moments, and stretch a bit. And that may, in fact, be life-changing. In previous years, there's been some debates, and we were just, Dr. Plywilly was speaking to this, is that we're putting out too many PhDs for the needs of the academic world. But this was countered with the understanding that there's an importance of having PhDs to support the economy in different ways. I think that graduate work gives you a host of skills that can be developed elsewhere. It's how you're able to think about the skills you gain and how they might be applied elsewhere that will allow you to be successful. Therefore, starting to think differently about how your skills can be applied in other industries. I had not really thought about this, but over time it became very clear to me that the focus of my work at the undergrad and the master's level was focused on creating optimal environments for performance. So I worked with Kay Anders Erickson out of Florida State on the theory of deliberate practice. It's that 10,000 hour rule. Has anybody heard about that? Yeah. So, well, I looked at the development of athletes and how their performance was all linked to time spent in deliberate practice and how well their environment was structured in order to achieve high levels of performance. Interesting? Yes, very interesting. Relevant to the real world? Well, at the time, I really could not see the relevance unless I really wanted to be a coach. If I wanted to go and be a coach, I would know how to train athletes, etc. But I didn't want to be a coach. And the only time I really felt it was really relevant is when people started reading that book, The Outliers, and then I could talk that, I was pretty cool that I worked on this 10,000 hours, and, I could talk about it at parties because everybody was reading the book, right? But really, at that point, that's all I could talk about because that's the only reflection I had on my master's program. So it's that time to reflect that will allow you to understand what your skills are. So I'll get to that point in a second, but over time I started to look at the graduate experience differently and tried to figure out what it was I truly enjoyed about the academic process. It was definitely not the writing, and I'm just throwing that out there. I've identified that as not my favorite thing to do in academia. But I realized what I was drawn to was that system level thinking and that change and that improvement and how do we do this? So when I was working as a communications person, it was okay, but it was not ideal because it was about the content area. And it was a perfect fit because of my interest in sport and my background, but it wasn't a fit for my skills and my passion. So I hope that if there's one thought that you can leave this with is that you can look at your skills and your passion and not just your content area when you're thinking about paths into the future. After some time away from academia, I returned, but again through somewhat of a cold call process, where I was able to get a job as a research assistant, but in a very different field. There was a large Canadian study that was looking for a qualitative researcher to assess practice change for infection control practices in neonatal, the little tiny, tiny babies, units in Canada. I knew absolutely nothing about neonatal babies. I knew nothing about infection control practices, but I did know a lot about qualitative research. And I was really intrigued by the fact of how do we improve the performance of those nurses so that they have better infection control practices so that they are not harming the babies that they're working with. Really interesting. So I pulled that common thread. I said, what is my passion here? And my passion was, how do we really understand the change and getting people to change and improve their practice? This fit and then led me to some key moments where I was exposed to the right people and I put myself on the line. At one moment I said, hi, will you be my PhD supervisor? Because I think your stuff is really neat. And it was only because I had put myself out there in a different way that I was able to see a different path in my life looking at more health services research. So coming back to one of my main points today here is you have to think about what you're passionate about, how your skills can be transferred, and be able to seize those opportunities. I had a conversation with one of my students the other day. I have a program where the students work, that I equip thing, really long name, small acronym now. I have a program where the students work in the community to help improve an aspect of health service delivery. So things such as improving wait times, they work with engaging oncology patients in the development of educational materials, they work on patient safety in health services. So as we were talking, he said, I just feel like there's not a lot of people that my project will impact, and that if we try to make changes and they don't work, then I've done nothing good, and I've learned nothing. And I was like, ooh, I haven't done my job, right? This is a very content-driven perspective. I told him that as a student, if he even impacts one patient and improves the life of one patient, that's a success. But what is more important from my educator perspective is that looking at those transferable skills. If he was able to learn about leadership, how to work in a team, how to integrate new research evidence into practice, then I'll feel that he has had a valuable learning experience. And he can take these transferable skills into the next stage of his life. And of course, that he needs to be able to reflect and articulate how this experience created these transferable skills. And then I said I would help him to do that. And of course he says, thanks. I wish we'd had this conversation before the med school interview. So poor kid. But just to kind of summarize here, here's a little bit of guidance that I hope will put you in the right brain space for today's session. I had this very insightful third-year student say to me on Tuesday, this kind of a version of this quote. It's amazing how much you can learn when you're actually really present and thinking and not just preoccupied by some bigger goal. I thought about that for a minute and I kind of laughed because really it is kind of true. And I think as graduate students and even as faculty sometimes, we're really constantly looking forward and saying, what's the next grant? What's the next application? What's the next paper? What's the next revisions I'm going to have to get? And although it's really important to always have that forward thinking, it's important and it's necessary, I think it can sometimes come at the expense of taking a full advantage of important moments. So therefore, I hope that you're able to ground yourself in these sessions today to truly learn and be able to do some of this self-discovery, understand your transferable skills, and to think about career action and your path that may diverge from academia. Then I guarantee that you'll be able to effectively push towards your own professional goals.